Well, thank you for staying with the Monday Report. Let's get into that conversation. Eric Theuri is joining us now. He's the LSK president-elect to be sworn in on the 25th. You can send in your questions to him as well at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. We'll sample them during this conversation. Eric, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you, Trevor, for inviting me.
Brilliant. So let's just get straight into it. What are your priority areas for LSK as the incoming president?
Of course, the first priority is to bring down the temperatures at the society, which has been the clarion call that most of the membership have been making during the period when we've been campaigning and even before that. So there is an element of sobriety that is needed at the society, and that indeed is our first priority. We get into office with an in-tray that is overflowing with a lot of activities.
Yeah.
But first and most importantly is just to ensure that we are able as advocates to access the most basic services that the society has to offer.
Yeah.
And also look inside, take a look in terms of how our secretariat is composed, see whether it is sufficiently resourced to be able to discharge its duties. But also we are alive to the fact that this is a campaign year.
Yeah.
And being a campaign year, then we also expect that the Law Society would be engaging its membership and other broader stakeholders to ensure that we are well prepared for the elections. And so those would be among our key priority areas as we get into office.
Okay. Let's dissect those ones one at a time. What is causing the rising temperatures that you've talked about at the LSK?
Well, I think the temperatures are now coming down. Once the branch chairs caucus took over leadership of the Law Society, I think there were divisions within the previous council, which of course affected even the most basic services that lawyers expect to get at the secretariat.
Yeah.
So we've had that calming period between January and now. Of course, with now the elections done, we are almost finishing the transition. And so once the new team comes into office on the 25th, their mandate then would be to sustain the measures that have been put in place by the caucus. But
Yeah.
you see, the caucus is really ideally an interim measure to ensure that the most basic of services are available to the membership.
Yeah.
But once the new office then comes into office, it has then the full mandate to ensure that that is ongoing, together with the other activities of the Law Society.
Yeah, I'm sticking to these rising temperatures because controversy has dogged the LSK. In fact, we saw it complete with the squabbles and even brawls, physical fights at the LSK headquarters. How are you going to deal with this and what is causing it? Because you can't fix it if you don't know what the cause really is.
You know how I'd want to look at it is that it is a past that the Law Society has. Those days are gone. The most that we can do is to pick up the lessons that that tumultuous period gave to the Law Society and move on from there, because you cannot go forward if your eye is constantly on the back view mirror. So you have to go forward, but taking into account the lessons that we have learned.
Yeah.
What are the lessons that we've learned? One of the lessons that we've learned is that if there is no harmony within the leadership of the Law Society, then even the most of the basic services to lawyers will be affected. So one of the key things that we would be working on, and I am as the team leader, when you're the president, you are ideally the vision bearer for the society, and you have a higher responsibility, being the first among equals, to ensure that then you are able to achieve a unity of purpose and get the whole team to move in one direction. So I'm hoping, and I know that I have the necessary wherewithal to be able to ensure that that is done.
Yeah.
And even as we do that, it is not just perhaps that is important. There are several bridges that perhaps may need to be repaired. There are new partnership and alliances that need to be built to ensure that the Law Society is positioned to be able to deliver on its mandate and to deliver on it effectively.
Yeah.
But that said and done, I don't think that the Havi-led regime, that the only legacy it has is that legacy of infighting within council. It also has a good legacy in terms of the position that they have taken and the aggressiveness in which they have addressed matters of public interest.
Yeah.
And so for us, as a team getting into office and looking at the entire society, sort of, a quick SWOT analysis, the strength that we need to build on has been the position that the council has taken with regard to public interest matters, so that then we now look at how best do we build on the other areas that they may not have performed extremely well.
Okay. Now that you brought up the Havi-led regime, what do you think went wrong in that regime? What lessons have you learned, whether good or bad?
It would be difficult to diagnose specifically what may have gone wrong, but I think it would not be far-fetched to say that it got to a point where the differences in opinion led to an impasse that could not be overcome. What could have led to that is up for determination, and ideally you allow history to judge those kind of issues. But the thing that really concerns us so much is that we got to a place where we never thought the Law Society could sink to, and we have drawn a line, and we have said as a society that never again should we ever allow our differences to take us to the levels that we found ourselves into. So those are the lessons that we have picked. That is what then motivates us in office, and it is something that is going to be on the mind of each and every council member. And I think even our membership will be, in the next few months, be looking out for signs of harmony or looking out for signs of disharmony, because there's quite a bit of anxiety as to whether we can be able to then maintain ourselves as a unit. Yeah. And for me, then that places an even extra burden to ensure that that is done, and to also ensure that we are not lost in trying to ensure that there is unity, but we also deal with some of the immediate and pressing concerns that the Law Society ought to address in view of its very wide mandate under Section 4 of the Law Society of Kenya Act.
So can you make a commitment here on live TV that we will not see the embarrassing situations we saw at the LSK? No physical fights, no goons, no pushing and pulling?
Yes, yeah, I mean, indeed, I would have no problem giving that kind of warranty. I have been a council member before. I've served in a council. So I understand. I'm not going to a new place. I understand exactly how the operations of the Law Society are run. I've also been a chair of the Nairobi branch, currently still are the chairman of Nairobi branch. And we were able to lead the society during the time of COVID, during a time when we had a freeze in financial resources from the national office, and we were able to navigate all those extreme challenges. And so that gives me a sense that we should be able to, on the basis of that experience, be able to manage these challenges. So that is an undertaking that I would give, an unequivocal undertaking that I would give, that I will do everything in my power to ensure that we have a united council, and we have a council that is not just united, but is performing and is focused solely on ensuring that we transform the Law Society. The Secretariat is responsive to the needs of the membership, and we also deal and effectively implement and champion the rule of law and the administration of justice.
You know, one of the standing conflicts of the last term, Theuri, was the president and the CEO of LSK going at loggerheads. And you just talked about the composition of the secretariat. Would you propose a restructuring of the LSK to ensure that that supremacy battle doesn't exist?
The structure of the Law Society has held its own for a very long time. What we need to do is to ensure that there is a very clear demarcation on the role of council and the role of the secretariat. Because when either performs the role of the other, then we get into a situation where the boundaries get blurred. But if you are in a situation where there is proper corporate governance, and in fact, one of the things that we probably would want to do within the next few days of our administration is to just get in experts in corporate governance to conduct a governance audit for us and tell us whether the structure that we have is a structure that can sustain the Law Society and propel it into the future in terms of our vision to be a society that ascribes to the highest global standards of corporate governance.
Yeah. So you'd rather let this come out from the audit report rather than you giving direct answers to whether it should be restructured or not?
Yes. I mean, you know, when you've had a period such as this, in as much as you believe that the structure is able to sustain itself, I think there is need because a governance audit is part of international best practice, and you find that most organizations would conduct this either in a 2-year period or 3-year period, just to be sure that the society or the organization is primed to be able to take on the challenges of corporate governance. So I think it would be a good point to start, because we intend to rebrand and reorganize the Law Society, and it would be foolhardy to undertake such measures of rebranding without really knowing whether the structure is in terms of the structural integrity of the structure, to be able to sustain growth and push us to the global level of that we want to take the Law Society to.
How will you deal with the difference of opinion?
The structure, my style of leadership is that I ideally speak last. So I listen to my members, to my council members. I try to, gauge their opinions, so that at the point where I speak having listened to most of the membership and having gauged their responses and feedback on up to a certain point, so that you are able to arrive at a decision made by consensus. This has worked very well for us at the Nairobi branch, because we've never voted on any decision that we've had to take. Then I hope that I would also be able to push this council to get to a point where most of our decisions would be by consensus, but where we are unable to achieve consensus, then that the will of the majority would prevail, but the minority will also have their say.
Do you think politics was a problem at the LSK in the last regime? Because we've seen the president move to an outright political position. Was that a problem, political interference?
I wouldn't say really, because I wasn't in council. I wasn't in that council. I was the chair of a branch, the Nairobi branch. So I may not know how much of a political interference there was. But and then that would mean that we are now going into the realm of suppositions, which I think would also be extremely unfair on my predecessor, Nelson Havi. So since those facts are not within my knowledge, I wouldn't really want to speculate.
Fair enough, but how will you deal with politics? Because it's a political season now, then you're taking over as the president. What happens?
Yeah, I appreciate that we are in a political season, but my thinking has always been that the Law Society ought to be politically neutral. But I say this, that I'm also cognizant of the fact that the bearer of the instruments of power is usually the government. That the institution that is likely to breach and violate rights is mostly the government. And so therefore, whenever the Law Society stands, and the Law Society must always stand for the defense of the rule of law and the public interest as the public watchdog, it may create a perception that the Law Society is anti-government. And that is a tag that we are prepared to bear. But what we are not prepared to do is to dabble into partisan political interests, because the moment we get into partisan political interests, then we are unable to faithfully discharge our mandates, and we therefore begin the process of diluting the kind of legacy that we will leave as a society. And I have no intention whatsoever to leave a legacy of partisan political positioning of the Law Society. I believe that the mandate of the Law Society is such that we must at all times conduct ourselves in a professional manner, in an ethical manner, and in a sober but firm and politically, to be apolitical in every situation.
Yeah. So what role are you going to play as the LSK? Because I find it interesting, where are you going to draw the balance? Some of your members will be representing some election petitioners, and also some people who are outright on the wrong or sometimes on the right. So how then, what role will you play if you want to be a neutral arbiter, and yet some of your members will be involved in these petitions?
Yeah, and that is the work of our members. And that is the work of our members, because the function and the primary reason why lawyers are there is to ensure that the rule of law is complied with. And so there is no coin that has one side. There's always one side and there's another side, and that's why we have judges, so that then they can listen to the rival arguments and to be able to make that decision. And so it is possible to ride the contours of the several different political aspirations, but to stick to the straight and narrow, to stick to what the Constitution says, to stick to what the law says, and ultimately, our various lawyers representing the different factions are intelligent enough to be able to say that even though my client's position is this, and remember, advocates just represents their client's positions. It's not ideally their position. So they might be advancing a client's argument, but ultimately, even they know where the law is. And of course, it's always not so easy for advocates to agree. Yeah. And so even in those cases, you would find that there would be dissent, but the large majority of it should be able to say that the position that the Law Society has taken is the correct position in law.
Does it concern you as the LSK when senior officials talk of a possible rigging of the election?
Yes, indeed. It is, because it is those type of allegations and the person making them that then gives credibility to the rumors. And when they are not factual, then they have another effect. And the effect is to raise public anger and animosity. And we are, I think this is one of the things that we really need to guard against. So as a law society, we will be we'll be watching the scene, the political scene, to ensure that those cases of, reckless statements that have the potential to incite public anger are contained and are contained within the law.
How? How will you do this?
We have enough mechanisms within our laws to deal with those kind of statements.
So will you be instituting legal charges against those who make those pronouncements?
Yes, and because we have an obligation to ensure that that is done, and we'll be working quite closely with the National, the Council on Cohesion, working a little bit much more closely with the DPP, following up on the actions that the police are taking to ensure that those kind of statements are dealt with swiftly and reasonably as they can be within the law. So we are basically at this point looking at how, once we get into office, we can start establishing the various structures that can be able to respond effectively to the several challenges that we expect down the road as we undertake the electioneering process.
So should we expect some legal suits, even if it involves the executive?
Yes, I think at this point, of course, we cannot say, because we do not know what is going to come. But the one thing that we can say is that we will put our house in order to be able to respond, and to respond effectively to the various challenges or the various issues that we know we can arise during the electioneering process, to ensure that we have a process that is free and fair and is conducive also for a free and fair and transparent and verifiable election.
Okay. Let's bring up some of the questions that are coming through on Twitter. Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya is the hashtag Monday Report. Sengeli Brian is the first one. He says, what strategy shall my learned friend adopt to push for reforms? And is he ready to rub shoulders with the government, or shall he be coerced to take tea at the Parliament lounge?
I mean, really, we really have made tea, we've punished tea for more than it should be punished. The idea, I don't think that the idea of taking tea and talking to each other is really such a bad idea. But I think the issue here is that we have very diverse membership. We have membership that has a lot of experience in so many matters, especially matters governance. And we intend then to draw on that membership and that experience to be able to respond, and respond effectively to some of the challenges that we expect to meet along the way. So the only commitment we can give is that the law society would be a robust, firm, and neutral defender of the rule of law.
Yeah. The reason why that question from Sengeli is important is because the deputy president himself was at some point quoted as having alleged that there is possible manipulation of decisions of the people at different levels, which most people interpreted to be a possible rigging of the polls. So will you take him head on?
You know, when a statement of that magnitude is attributed to the deputy president, then it carries with it some semblance of credibility. The question then becomes, how has that statement been made? Is it in the form of a report to the competent authorities giving facts that can then be able to sustain a political, or rather an investigation? But let us flip it, because I think we are in a position where the most that we can do, because if we jump at each and every statement, then there'll be a lot of statements that will be, ideally be chasing after the wind. The thing that we need to do is to engage the relevant entities, that is the IEBC, and all the other sector players, to ensure that we have a system that has integrity. Okay. And to also call on politicians to understand that they have a duty not to make inflammatory statements or statements that they cannot substantiate. You find that in Parliament, whenever they make such statements, they would be asked to substantiate or withdraw. And I think that is what we should do, that we need to get to a level of maturity, political maturity, that a politician would not make such statements without backing, because without an evidential backing, because when that is non-existent, then that is the kind of statements that now begin to be called reckless. Okay. But what is our responsibility? Our responsibility, by view, would be to interrogate the systems that the IEBC is putting in place vis-a-vis the law and the adequacy of the law to ensure that we have an election that meets the standards that are set out in the Constitution. Okay. That is our duty, and it's a duty that we will ensure we implement to the best of our ability. All right.
Morocco says, first, congratulations, Eric Theuri, on your win. Now, what is your first agenda as members head to the LSK AGM on the 25th of March, 2022?
For us, as a law society, I must admit that there is an element of mistrust between the membership and the leadership. The first step to restoring that trust is to ensure that the forensic audit, which is already ongoing, is completed, that the annual audit are completed, so that the question of how safe our money is at the society is addressed, because that is critical in terms of restoring trust between the leadership and the membership. Once we are able to get that out of the way, then it would mean that then we have the opportunity then to implement the other measures that we need to implement to make the Secretariat slightly much more responsive to the needs of the membership, as we also address the other issues germane to rule of law and the administration of justice.
Okay. Okelo Mwalimu says, as I congratulate Theuri on his election as LSK boss, I'd like him to respond to the following. 1. What will he do to end factionalism at the Law Society of Kenya? What does he aim to achieve in the first 100 days in office? And can he describe his leadership style? Let's start with the first one. How will you end factionalism, as he calls it?
I think that would be an easy thing to do. And the easiest way to do it is to respect each and every view that is in the boardroom, even those that are divergent to your own, and to try and see how best you can bring the divergent opinions into one opinion that all the members can owe.
Okay. First 100 days in office, what do you intend to achieve?
First 100 days in office, we hope to be able to have completed the ongoing processes of conducting the audits, the financial audit. Secondly, we hope to put in place measures to ensure that we have the corporate audit done, the corporate governance audit done, so that we are able to know whether our structure is good enough to sustain our operations. We are also looking at, because there's been quite some feedback on the question of our code of standard and code of conduct and ethics. So I'm hoping that we can be able to get an opportunity to reduce that into a simplified short version that can be disseminated for ease of consumption by our membership.
Yeah.
We also hope that within those days we would have begin the process of amending any relationships that may have been strained as a result of the period that we have gone through. Looking into new partnerships so that we can be able to build capacity at the Secretariat. I'm particularly keen to ensure that the Law Society improves its own internal capacity to be able to generate legislative proposals so that we can then be able to engage Parliament much more effectively when it comes to the lawmaking process.
How to describe your leadership style?
Ideally, I should say I'm a consensus builder.
Okay.
Firm when I have to be firm, but most of the time I try to build consensus.
Okay. Let's bring up all the tweets and see what you're saying before I give you a chance for closing remarks here. Flavian Mulama says the rising temperatures are as a result of the call for a forensic audit. The temperatures will only cool after the results of the forensic audit are out and acted upon. I hope Mr. President and Council will see to it that it's done, okay? Lynette says, congratulations to the President-elect. My expectation is to see this man handling cases without attaching emotions, okay? Murkomen Daniel says, ask Mr. President how he intends to address low pay, poor working conditions and unsafe workplaces that has been affecting young lawyers and pupils and advocates, as well as the bottlenecks students face in the legal education, especially at the Kenya School of Law. You'll answer that as you wind up. Birgen K. Isaac says, the new LSK chair is eloquent and wise, sounds well-versed with what awaits him, great team leader, all right? Obura says, I wish Theuri nothing but the best as he takes over office of our beloved society. We only request for official election observers tags to be issued to all the advocates as we approach the August general elections. All right? Closing remarks from you. There's a complaint there from students saying there's too much bottlenecks.
Yes, and we appreciate we have, you know, a growing membership that is extremely young, and it is going through a lot of challenges. And we are hoping that we can be able to sit together, the senior lawyers, the younger members of the society, and try and find solutions to some of those challenges. Some are not easy to deal with. The ones that we can easily deal with, we will deal with. Others that require, you know, some sort of intervention, be it legislative, because there have been several reports as to the reasons as to why there is a lot of failure, the Kenya School of Law, that requires a lot of cross-cutting and the different stakeholders coming together to implement those. So those are things that we will look into, and we are alive to those challenges. So for me, the parting shot would be that we are now on the brink of a new administration, that we should be allowed to get into office with a clean slate. As we have said, we understand where the challenges are. We know why we've had a bit of the issues that we have, and most of those things are already being addressed. So that we should be given the benefit of doubt and the necessary support from our membership to be able to carry out the mandate of the Law Society. We hope that we will be able then, once our processes are done, the forensic audit and the other audits are done, to be able to begin to calm down the temperatures and to really focus on the job of the Law Society, which has taken quite a hit because of the contestations that we've had. So we just want to give our membership and the country at large our undertaking that the Law Society under my leadership will be a different law society, will be a society that will be focused solely on its mandate, on its vision, and in ensuring that we are able to live a law society that is responsive to the needs of the membership now, responsive to the needs of the membership in the future, and is also able to meet and discharge the heavy burden it has been, has been bestowed on the Law Society previous law societies have discharged that mandate, and I have no doubt whatsoever that we have the necessary experience in our membership to ensure that we live up to that very high calling of ensuring that the rule of law and the administration of justice is upheld each and every time.
All right.
Yes.
Mr. President-elect, all the best.
Thank you so much.
Eric Theuri, there is the President-elect for LSK, being sworn in on the 25th, and thank you for making time this evening, and thank you for these questions that you sent through. I'm sure we'll have him again as time rolls out and he takes on his mandate at the Law Society of Kenya. All right, that's where we leave it for now. On behalf of everybody else who made this possible, my name is Trevor Ombija. It's always a pleasure having you with us. Have a good night, and see you again tomorrow. All right, bye for now.